thing. So do we think that these are the data privacy principles? Are they applicable here? So that is a thing to ponder. So why for a visitor management system, we have to take so much of pain designing the system and doing all this? So yes, it is applicable because visitors are your stakeholder. They are one of the data subject for you, and we have to take care of data. Their data processing, which needs security, needs privacy, compliances. So if you look at that, let's ask again, what does it mean? Should we focus on this, or it is just in an enterprise? Do you have a visitor policy? Do you have a process document telling that what data to be collected and what is the overall visitor flow? Do you have that? So do we have an impact assessment done on the visitor management system? Do you know that what risk will happen? Did you do that? Did you undergo a BAPT system, vulnerability assessment? Did you have an application security testing? Let's understand all that, right? So now, did we give notice and consent to the visitor when we collected all this data, either online or sometimes some of the companies, they will have an online form, visitor can fill that and automatically it will get stored. So that is online. It is also needs some notice and consent, right? So did we tell him that when we are collecting the data, we'll use the data for this purpose, we'll delete after this visit, and we may store this data for our record purposes, or we may have your name in our sales registry because you are visiting us, you are one of the prospective customers and all that. Can we have that? So we have supposed to tell them. Or are we storing this in India, or we are storing outside? Are I transferring or I am not transferring? So many more. So let's understand. Shall I delete the data post the visit? That means data retention comes into play. Storage limitation is playing a key role. Now, I am giving him a Wi-Fi access because he has to access internet in our building. So am I monitoring his access, his web visits? Because my internet protocol across the company is monitoring web logs for the insider threat. So am I doing that for him, or he's exempted? So if we exempted, we have a policy on that. But if no exemption, how you are ensuring that security? Now, next one, he may have access to internal systems because for demo or hands-on or something, or auditors can have access. So if it is have I signed NDA with him? Am I ensuring that what access he is doing, I'm monitoring that access so that he is not doing anything wrong? So now, so I am collecting all his data. So I have a visitor management system. It will have a database or record keeping. So am I encrypting the data? Because if I collect so many details, without any purpose, am I ensuring that they are collected? Now, next one, no exchange of PI on emails. Should I take his passport details and tell that, okay, give an access to Wi-Fi based on the passport details? Or shall I take a telephone number and tell that, please give access to the telephone number? So if you look that, this is just a snapshot. So if you look that, what does it mean? Mean that we can never ignore all the principles. We have to do, but with a limitations. We cannot do everything. So what we have to do? We have to do the impact assessment. Then we have to ensure that based on the impact assessment, there will be recommendations, and we have to implement those recommendations. So then the question is, are all the above applicable? So in the prima facie, yes. But up to what extent, what context, that depends upon the implementation control. So that is what is very, very important when we talk about this, talk about the impact assessment. So now with this philosophy, let's move to the next, where I will take a break. I will want to do something called privacy impact assessment. So what is privacy impact assessment? A buzzword going on round, everyone is asking, very difficult to do this and all. It is nothing, because we are doing already. When we are doing an assessment of any system for access or anything, we are doing. Now we have to just extend that to privacy and personal data aspect, keeping privacy principles in mind and ensuring that they are adhered to. So that means it's applicable to existing information system, new information systems. Doesn't mean that existing systems are not subject to data privacy regulations. Yes, they are very much. But however, we have to ensure that they are also covered. I'll just talk on that also a little bit. So now, what do it mean? So what the risk assessment is doing? Actually, it is identifying the actual or potential effect. Whenever you process any personal data, this impact assessment based on the techniques, it will identify what are the privacy risks that may happen. So it will tell that, okay, these are the possibilities that the data may be consumed or may not be consumed. Now coming to this. So this is a life cycle. So first we have to understand the scope, the context and analysis. The way we went to the previous on visitor management system, there I mentioned about the purpose. I mentioned that it is for business reason, for audit. Okay. Then what is the scope? No, he will only have discussions. He will not do anything else. So that is the purpose I have defined, I have context. So now what I did, that I also told that what data I will collect for the visitor management system. So what happens there, I know the personal data flow. I showed you the flow diagram, how the personal data may traverse. So when that personal flow travels in the life cycle of the data, then am I adhering to the privacy? That is the privacy assessment. That means if I go back again to one, I will tell, have I collected all the data that is required? Not excessive? Yes. First tick. Am I ensuring that all the data that I collected is secured? Yes. Second tick. Did I do any data collection more than the purpose? No, I am good. Did I collect the data that is accurate at this point of time? That means not false telephone number, not false data. Yes, I cannot check, but yes, I am ensuring. Do I do the data transfer? May not be. It is not required now. It is an India guy. Data will be in India. I'm not sending anywhere. Do I do storage limitations? Should I take and control on the storage limitation? Yes. Yeah, I have to ensure that after it is done, purchase is over, visit is over, maybe after 24 hours, I will delete all his data. Okay. Does he have access to data subject rights? Very much. You are a data subject. He can send a mail to you. Did XYZ company, did you delete my visiting details that I gave? You have to tell, yes, we have deleted on this date and without anything. Then did you do a consent and notice to him? Yes, we are showing and notice your data will be collected on this. You will be identified by this and you will be having access to only this. Your data will be deleting, will send, will have a host. So we are telling him all that. That means we are giving notifying. And we are taking his consent. He is giving that, okay, you can take my data. If he has a reservation, he can tell, no, I will not give my passport details because it is not required for processing, or I will not give my government ID number. You can see it. You can see it and you can note, yes, I am the same person who is standing in front of you. You are looking at me. You can visually authenticate me. And with my name, of course, I'm giving. I'm also determining ID card. So you can take an identity from there. So then accountability. That means who is accountable for this data? The data controller. So if I go back here, so that means I am taking care of everything. So then privacy and security control mapping. That means whatever we talked about, then we have to have authentication. We have to have user ID password for him. Wi-Fi user ID password. We have to give a pass, that is physical pass, which is security control. Then we have to ensure that he is notified. Then the privacy notice is implemented. We are not applying his data transfer. No, not applicable. We are ensuring that this is purpose. Yes, privacy ticked. Purpose is done. So if you look at that, privacy organization control, privacy controls, either notice, purpose, and all that. And technical controls you are taking up is access control, physical control, he is signing NDA and all that, right? So then we have to see that we are giving all this as a part of the recommendations. That is a report that we will do, that is known as the recommendations. But however, the recommendations will have privacy controls like notice, like or consent or purpose, all this we have to be mentioned. And in addition to that, security controls you mentioned, these are the technical controls that has to be taken care. Now, the biggest question, doubt in many minds that comes in my mind also, when should I do this PIA, man? When should I take care of the PIA? Why should I do? When should I do? Let's understand the scenarios. Sometimes mandated by regulation. Yes. Is it always? No. Should we do that when sensitive personal data is there? Yes. Why? Because degree of harm is more. Hence, we have to understand what are the different harms, because you have to mitigate those risks. The second one, when we complex data flows, that we have to ensure that complex data flow are there in the PII, very large system. We don't know where to do. So we have to do a data mapping. You have to look at the logical schema. You have to do the database schema to understand that where the data is traversing throughout the life cycle. Then profiling and predicting. Yes, if I'm profiling somebody for business, I should ensure that privacy is there, because during profile, I may collect additional data points which may not be allowed by the privacy. So I have to ensure that how to do that. And hence, when I'm predicting, that Ramakant may have a behavioral trend to buy privacy books in Flipkart. That means I am seeing he's traversing to multiple sites in the internet and collecting those footprints, and then I am able to correlate and give some prediction. So that means I should be careful, because I should tell him that I may collect this business for a business. And if it's in California, if I'm collecting, then I may ask him, do you want to sell this data for me to monetize? I will give some commission to him. So those are the things that may be there. Next, automated decision making. So if you are making any automated decisions based on the data, you better tell it upfront that yes, I am collecting all these details from you because processing your credit card. But however, if your credit card is having a negative balance or negative things, then I may not process you. Intimate them. But suddenly collect all data and then reject his credit card without notifying him. Not something not encouraged in privacy, or it is not a good compliance. Now, next one, systematic monitoring. Suppose in public places, we are ensuring that there is a public mentions CCTV, the monitoring, government is monitoring because of riots or because of terrorist or security reasons. But however, if they have to tell that, yes, you may be monitored, but we will use this sparingly, we will not use this on they have to notify. They have to put a level there that they notify. Systematic monitoring again also will come under large scales where it is for the public use, public purpose. So those cases are coming under that. Then high risk processing. Suppose someone is doing kind of data leak prevention monitoring on my net. Whatever I'm doing, it is monitored. Even in my personal router connections when I'm using my official laptop. So that is also there because I may connect and I may do something. So is it something that is legitimate? Is it proportionate? Whether it is necessary? Or so we have to ask all those questions. So we have to do that because it is invasive privacy. Large scale data processing. Suppose so many processing we are doing in types of income tax. We are doing the processing, suppose large for the different social schemes. So whenever we do all this, right, we would ensure that large scale data processing might have errors. So here we have to ensure that impact assessment is done, appropriate controls are taken in place, and we have to not map the individuals. So our concept of the differential privacy and our of zero proof knowledge proof comes here. Now, next one, innovation and new technologies. Whenever we have innovation, new technologies, because no one knows how the data flows, no one has tested that earlier. So hence, it is better to do proof of concept and ensure that the data flow is ensured and we control them and privacy is enforced. So these are some scenarios. These are samples, but covers most of them. So this is there. Now, another question comes in mind. What benefits I get when I do that? Okay. Now, process improvement, because each time you will add more and more processes to enhance your business timelines, enhance your efficiency, systems, productive, and everything. So process improvement, yes. Now, next one, stakeholder confidence and buy-in for privacy culture. If any of the company enterprise for taking the personal data for the purpose of employment, they tell that we are collecting this particular data, suppose for blood group. Blood group is something optional in most of the companies. But some company, he's taken initiative and telling that if I collect your blood group, you give the blood group, right? Then I will be ensuring this is the protection I am doing. I'll use in this way, and I'll ensure that this is benefited individual to you and beneficial to others. So that means it will take and stakeholder confidence. The privacy culture gets built in. Then people will think, yeah, many things I know that why they are doing. I know that what they'll do with my data. They ensuring the data security. They're ensuring that although it is in cloud, they are ensuring everything for me. So that privacy culture has to buy in. Next one, business differentiations. So if your product or your deliveries has privacy ready, you can demonstrate the privacy enforcement. Then what can happen? That differentiation, unique selling point becomes the key in addition to your competitors. So that means we can differentiate. We can go loudly tell that my product, my platform is privacy ready. You can come and do an audit. I have done it. I have enforced. I have used privacy by design through privacy engineering, and I implemented the controls. The next one is compliance to regulations. So however, though we are doing business, although innovation is good, it is fine, encouraging, but we can never neglect regulations. So regulations are there to govern the industry, govern the business, govern the economy, commerce, everything, and society and human rights. So hence we have to do compliance to regulations. So if you are non-compliant to regulations, you have to pay penalty. Our brand image goes for negative marketing, and nevertheless you never know, you will also start losing customers. So that benefit I get. Now coming there, when to initiate? Many questions that are asked, that when should I initiate a privacy impact assessment, or indirectly it is risk assessment. So what during the new, if you are designing a new system, new application, or you are doing a new requirement, you can imbibe them directly from the design or requirement stage. We discussed that proactive, not reactive. So that we can do using privacy by design concept. Now, what to do for existing? I have a 20-year-old process. I don't know whether they are using personal data. I never saw that. What to do? Don't worry. So take an approach, do an assessment currently. Is there any personal data is there? If personal data is there, not there, you need not worry, because we are doing privacy impact assessment, focusing on that there is a personal data processing happening in your system. If you do not have personal data system, suppose for a research and analytics, whenever the personal data is not available, suppose they are all de-identified, it is coming to the system with de-identification, then you need not be worried about privacy, because you are not having any kind of trace or trail of privacy in your data, right? So that is what. And always you can, existing systems can go for process automations, can go for process changes, and we can apply there. Now coming to that. So and one more thing, best practice that I would like to share is that whenever you do the privacy recommendations, don't underestimate the implementations. You have to enforce that they are implemented before go live or roll out or technology change. Otherwise, what happens? This is in the, just like in the basket. It is never got implemented, and what benefits you are supposed to envisage to see, you will never get those benefits. So hence, validation also one part. Which department will do what will do, that is all we will say. Now coming to the next one, this is a continuous improvement process. You cannot say that I have done PII today, and as per the thing I have given recommendations, but I am good. But however, remember, if you are going to add one more data, personal data element into the kitty, so what will happen? We are ensuring that we are taking that, and we are ensuring that we are not compromising. And now personal data has come, it will have impact. So that justifies it is a continuous improvement process. It is no brainer not to think that it is not continuous improvement process. Okay, so with this, I will take a break here. Okay, I have one more use case that is interesting a little bit, but that's a travel of pizza. If time permits, I'll take that. Otherwise, I'll take a break here before I move to audit certification and Indian thing, and then we can go from there.
Yeah, so I think we have a lot of questions pouring in the Q&A window.
Yes.
So the first question is, sir, this is because most of us are security and audit professionals, right? So one of the important challenge when we face during the data privacy issues are something like when the application teams, like the development teams or the testing teams, they request real production data in their development and other environments, right? Without using pseudonymization or anonymization, because they do a lot of research or analytical activities, which they cannot do with pseudo or a dummy data. So there is always a security risk of using a production data in the lower environment, right? A kind of a privacy issue where developer can have access to it. So what do you generally advise in these cases for the security and audit professional when they are looking into these kind of scenarios?
Okay, good question. So the first one, what we have to look at, let's understand that do they need all the privacy data elements in the production database? That means, do they need, suppose there are around 10 different columns available in the production database. Do they need all those in the real form? Or they need only one identifier to map the records during their what do you call the testing, so that they understand that record is good. That is number one. That means we are minimizing the risk of de-identification of 11 out of 12 data points element. Number one, that is one suggestion. The second one, if it is possible to scramble the data, I understand that they may not agree, but if it is required, that you can scramble those fields which are not required. They might be personal tag, personal data elements in the database. But if it's not required in the testing, it's not contributing to their analysis or analytics, then that can be completely scrambled. Number two. Number three, if they are having this particular testing in an environment where we have to ensure that starting from the privilege access management for the admins and all the data access and everything is strictly enforced just like production data, so that you do not have a chance that security might fail or there might be a database copy. Number two. Number three, do they really need so much volume of data that suppose 1 million record, do they need 1 million records or they need a part of that? So whole download of production data may not be there, but yes, for a sample testing or ensuring they can have their own testing criteria to pull different reports based on the use cases and get into the testing bed. They need not take the data as available as is in production. The fourth point is the guys who are doing that, the data testing, either it is from an application team or they are from other team, there should be a test window that is given. During the test window, there should be special monitoring of the data elements, those guys. And the test window cannot open long, and test window has to be closed and strictly monitored. Fourth, the next one is without compromising, if it is in cloud, if we are doing everything cloud, then we have to have multiple other kind of authentications going there. They should not be able to download. They should not be able to store on anything on their database. So the system should freeze except that window that should be there. Just like when you were taking Prometric exam, only that window is there. Everything is frozen in the system, right? So similarly, those kind of controls has to be there for the testing purpose.
Thank you, sir. I think it really helps out. The next question is around the data deletion and the data life cycle, right? So we kind of take data in the primary server, secondary server, BCP, DR, and again, some of the data is also stored in the backup tapes, right? So when there is a data deletion request raised by a data subject, so how this can be properly enforced, or how we should check as a security or a privacy professional, this control has been really implemented in the ground level?
Okay, it is an extremely good question. And this particular problem has not been solved yet. Many organizations, they're trying their best to design. Many of the entities who are in this field, technical field, advanced field, they're trying, but there is no breakthrough here yet. So the logic is, so it is not only the different environment that you talked about, backup tape or cloud and everything, right? There is a lot of things which is linked to the social networking site as well, your LinkedIn, and also different sites like provident fund sites, income tax sites. Suppose I take those professional sites, right? So if you look at whenever, suppose some company, they are pulling the data, collecting data, they gave to different sites. And when the data subject, they put a request, it will tell, I have somebody with that PAN number and Aadhaar card, right? And you have to ensure that in all sources, either it is processed or it is stored or it is collected, is deleted. That is the ask from the data subjects. So right now there is no mechanism. People are making the attempt, but however, the best possible suggestion according to me as a practitioner is that you have to see whatever the data that you can delete, that you can inform and you can notify to the data subject based on the request. And you have to also tell them that there are some data which has gone to different government bodies for the legal requirement. You can notify them, your data has gone to these places and it can be deleted whenever the purpose is over. We don't have control on that. Basically, my point is, whichever you have a control, you can assure them that this will be deleted on this date, or you have deleted this delete certification from these systems. Then second part is wherever you don't have the control, like government authorities where you are given, you can tell them this is beyond our control, but however, we will notify them, but we don't have the control there. Third point is, now coming to the backup tapes and your BCP sites and the cloud and n number of things, right? So it is very, very challenging to trace the data first. First of all, the eliminating the existence of data in different systems and sources, that is becoming the challenge through the data discovery, which we don't have an integrated mechanism right now. Okay, that to Intimator Ramakant has given a data and his data has to be seen across. Suppose my company has taken the data. So in event of this, we can take small steps in order to get compliant, whatever possible we can have. And we have to ensure that suppose for some things like applications within the companies, right? And whenever the purpose is over, they can start deleting. For example, suppose I have traveled to some foreign countries and I have traveled and I given some food preferences, right, in the airline, or that is captured by the ticketing department of my company because they need to book a vegetarian, non-vegetarian and all that, or Indian or Chinese, right? So those kind of thing that is there. That is number one. Number two, I stored in some hotels, I provided some bills. And once my claim is settled and my travel is done, maybe period of 1 year, once this is done, then this need not be stored because it is no longer required for processing. What is the processing? Because I have to get a ticket, I have to travel, I have traveled. So I have consumed my food. So that can be deleted. What has happened next? My claims. I have traveled, stayed in the hotel, took the cab bills. Now you have settled mine, and also it is reflected in my income tax submissions. So that is no longer required because you have verified my bills. You have verified everything that you have assessed and you have done. So these are small kind of initiative that can be taken to look at in the organization. What are the things that is no longer required can be done as one of the steps. Second, we can be open with the data subject telling that these are the data we can delete. These are the data we cannot delete. It is not within the control. At this point of time, it is somewhere else.
No, I think that's a best practice you said, right?
Yeah.
Keeping the data subjects informed, which I think it's not a real practice in most of the organization, but yeah, it's a kind of a good transparent step where we say that whatever is in control, we are taking care. Some of them, which is shared with the other third parties, yeah, needs to go there. Yeah. Thanks for that, sir. And a couple of interesting questions are also on the way. The first one is from Manzoor Ahmed. Keeping the context of privacy principles and design, what are the best practices and controls to be considered before implementation of BYOD by an organization for its employees? Any view on BYOD?
Okay. Okay, it is a good question. I had a use case. I didn't want to put that because a lot of questions will come, but finally it has come good. So the logic is like this: BYOD as in policy. Okay, so let's understand we restrict to only mobile phones. Okay, because there are many things which will come up the working devices like your laptop also now BYOD is there, but we'll the answering this focus only on the phones, right? So first of all, as we understand, it's no more. So all of us are private security and privacy professionals here. So we understand we should have a policy, and we should have also a kind of process, procedures, and system to track, to allocate, and monitor, and all that. So that is given. I'm assuming that all of us have that. Now coming to the next one, whenever we talk about BYOD, when you give that, so there are two parts to that. You can use your device for two. One is official purpose, one is a personal purpose. Okay, that is a thing. So there should be some segregation, contentment that needs to be done. Okay, so that if you are accessing any of your official tenants and your official email or MS Teams or whatever applications which link to, or your suppose your applications on mobile, company application on mobile. So what should happen whenever you are entering that? So there are n number of things that should be restricted. That means those controls like no copy, no sending, no sharing, no snippets. So many things that can be done. Okay, that is one thing that those controls has to be those has to be controlled. So the another thing is if it is possible, if it different kind of operating system and the operating system that containerization can happen, then you can control the containers for official and personal. Okay, and however, there might be still some kind of leakages that can happen. But here, how does it happen for privacy is that, so since you are not allowing any kind of data to be copied or viewed, view is fine, and copied, and also transferring, or you are controlling anything. So hence some risk is reduced, number one. Number two, the another aspect that can happen here is that you will not be upload anything from your WhatsApp, right, on which is there on phone to your official site or to your official emails. So that also those restrictions of upload of your personal things which you want to upload, something that has to be stopped because it is not recognizing that you are the official container. So that is number one. And we have to ensure that all the charts and whatever we are doing on the mobile devices, okay, there has a time limit of to expiry date, we can expiry time. So that the chart under which specific to the mobiles which is controlled here has to automatically get expired, so that there is no tag at any point of time it is done. And your mobile device has to be encrypted, because you are using official thing. If it is being hacked or it is being done, then at least encryption will prevent some kind of immediate kind of action. So it has to be encrypted. And one more thing that needs to happen, of course, you will have NDAs, you will have UID, acceptance of consent and all this. Now, the interesting part is, whenever, suppose you are getting an official device, okay, this is about the personal device, but using BOID. But if you are having an official device and the official device control is with the company, when it is with the company, company has every right to search your device. That means in event of any doubt or any investigation or something, they can take your device and they can look at all your official and personal data together. Right? They should not do as per that personal data, but there is very thin line. If it is not partitioned well or it is not controlled well, then there is a chance that the rules which is extract the forensic tools, they might touch upon all the data, and that segregation needs to happen. So that is one thing. And then when you are depositing, when you are also submitting your device, suppose you are leaving the company or you want to change, then all the personal data has to be wiped up, right? So it is a responsibility of the individual, the data subject, the user, to wipe up and submit, so that the disposal policy that we talk about, data disposal policy, that is also enforced. So these are some of the benefits that can be taken care.
Sure, sir. Thanks. I think those are good insights, the way we have to look at, especially the data.
I think Ganesan, we'll move to another two. Okay.
Yeah.
Then we'll open, if people are interested, another 5-10 minutes.
Yeah, sure. So I think a quick time check. We have other 15 more minutes. So I would request you to we'll complete the slides, and then I think there are a lot of questions. We'll take it up as a fireside chat towards the end of the session.
Yeah,
yes, sir. Let's move on. Yeah.
Okay. So just going back to again, there was a request that what we should do on the terms of audits and governance, right? So I just tried to capture in nutshell. I have another slide to talk about certifications also. See what happens here. It is no different than whatever we have security governance councils and also private governance council, governance meetings and controls and policies. It remains the same. The only difference here is that the privacy councils will define the risk, privacy risk, and which has to be taken care along with the different stakeholders. And so the formation of a technical steering committee is advised, because steering committee will take care of the technical implementations which are mapped to the privacy risk in conjunction with all the stakeholders. That is one takeaway from here. And then the privacy change management that happens due to the regulatory changes, which happens from time to time and country to country, because we are operating in multiple countries. So the privacy team who gives those kind of regulatory changes, so there will be a timeline in specific to be implemented. Beyond post that, it will be all enforced on penalty and violations. So that should be taken care. And one more thing has happened. Most of the times, what we should do, we should have internal and external privacy audits, right? It is not a task that the guys who are auditor, all my friends here, they cannot do privacy audit. They can do with a little bit of knowledge and due diligence and all that. They can still do that. And because auditing principle doesn't change, only the contextual applications they change and mapping to the regulation change. So that can be done. So this is something that I would take. And of course, incident and breach here is very, very different. And a lot of learning has to be done each time, because privacy risk and incidents is not only related to one, right? It is not related to the company. It is related to the data subjects, related to the guys whose data is being compromised, the customer data is compromised. And we have an enforcement by the data protection authorities where we have to report within 24 hours, 72 hours, and we have to give an action plan. We have to see that how mitigation can happen, right? So the privacy breach is sometimes not ending at just putting the preventive or corrective controls. It also goes beyond that, reporting to the management, reporting to the board, reporting to the authorities, with also preventive actions and liability penalty being paid. And sometimes it is a breach of natural, then your name, company name will come in the risk register. It will come into the register of the DPA, which is a brand image. So there are so many things that goes in that. So that is something has to be taken care. But however, on the right hand top, there are a few metrics that I have put. KPIs, key process indicators. They may not be exhaustive, but we have to ensure that the number of PIA is completed. So why I'm talking about the PIA completed is that because there will be many systems which will change, many process will change, many applications will be changing. We will adopt new technologies. So for that, as we discussed in the PIS session, we have to have PIS done. So it is mandatory to know how many PIS being done. If it is not done, of course, there is a different monitoring enforcement we can do, what you call the business support function wise, like someone HR is doing or not, finance is doing or not, you can monitor differently, but however it is important. Then creating a privacy awareness culture in the company is very, very key, because it is no substitute and it is mandatory by the regulations that company guys should know privacy awareness. You can have your e-learning on multiple ways, but that is done. Then of course, data subject requests and complaints, whether you address in time and appropriately, and or they have escalated to the authorities. So many things that may come there. Incident we discussed, and exceptions or risks also which are accepted beyond control, or we can have an appetite to take the risk we have to do. And the main thing which everyone is struggling is that all the vendors that we have, maybe 2,000 vendors in large enterprises, have we ensured that if they are processing personal data, their contract, their systems are privacy compliant, because they are taking our data and going and processing, right? So that is something we have to ensure. That is one of the key. Then contractual violations will be key, because you have to understand, because it always talks about the liability cap, and whether we have taken appropriate insurance to cover the liability, and whether the insurance is clear enough to include the privacy risk and privacy violations. We have to all that. Then of course, compliance to records of processing. Records of processing is nothing but processing of the personal data and recording them according to the requirements of the law. So these are some of the things that can take. So now coming to the next one. So the I have right hand side talks about that some of the certifications or framework is already available. Most of you guys are aware of that, are doing that. But Trustee under the Trust ARC, right? It is a kind of privacy compliance program, okay, which can give you some view of the different privacy intrinsic fundamentals, but it may not be something which is as comprehensive as ISO 27701, right? So here, whenever you guys are doing audit, definitely there is a reference to data privacy, because it talks about personal data, the health data, and many more, credit data, which is the credit card details mapped to the individuals, may cause harm, right? So whenever you're doing, it is already referred to different clauses of data privacy or regulatory requirements, and hence indirectly it is covered, and it should be looked into. But however, we have not taken care that in that spirit of what really means as of today. But it is happening. It is not that it is not happening. So now coming to the privacy information management system, just like ISMS, which is covered under 27001 under all its different code of practice. Similarly, ISO 27701 is predominantly related to privacy. It is in November 2019, it got published. So, but the fundamental prerequisite is ISO 27001. Why is that? Because it is felt and it is required that privacy of data, that means protection of data, can enforced only through security controls and security practices. It is non-negotiable. So hence the prerequisites for this particular framework or this standard is ISO 27001. Now the next one key highlight here is it is applicable to data controller and data processor both. So that means who is the processing custodian of the personal data, and data processor who is processing on their behalf. So earlier, if you look at that, although we have a lot of enforcement through ISO 27701 for data processors who like companies who are working on behalf of customers. But here there are a lot of direct liabilities and direct indications and non-compliances are enforced for data processor, because most of the data processors have good amount of exposure to the personal data of the controller. So that is why it is enforced. And there are two separate sections in this framework which talks about controller and processor, and well articulated and well designed, and very much details is available. Now coming to that, this is one of the standard, like other standards, other ISO standards, which is comprehensive in nature to all sectors and all industry domains. Okay, mostly it is focusing on the personal data, but it can be carved out and it can be applicable. And it is also taken care of all the best practices and from different kind of regulations, requirement, and good amount of mapping to GDPR also has been mapped. So that since GDPR was predominantly one gold standard, now many standards are coming which will match that. But however, this ISO standard has taken cognizance of the requirements and mapped them, which is there. So that is something which I'm talking about, but there is no other standard which directly gives a stamp that you are privacy certified. But however, provisions are available that industry bodies can develop their own code of conduct, and they can get them approved by authorities and can follow. And then monitoring of approved code of conduct will happen by the data protection authorities, that is there. And there are privacy audits which can be done by auditors and external consultants. That is no brainer, it can be done. And of course, if there is a certification which is available, that can be applied for and get certified. But however, if you are certified and there is a breach or violation happen, that doesn't mean that your liability and your kind of penalty is reduced. Certification is your confidence building, ensuring that process house is in order. But if you don't maintain your house in order, that doesn't give a guarantee that you will not be penalized. So that is one. Now coming to the Indian privacy bill. So it is with the final stages of getting approval. So now a lot of industry bodies and international stakeholders are also in discussions. So we do not have a date yet, but it may happen soon. So it is a comprehensive regulations applied to all sectors, private and government, and all industry sectors. It is omnibus. So now I want to, just before I go there, I want to tell them who are significant data fiduciaries. So here data fiduciary is nothing but data controllers. So significant means they are large or they are moderate. So the significant word will be notified with the government once the bill makes a law, become a law. But now there is no that who are, they are not there. But now, but however, they have told that volume of data, volume personal data processed. But what is the volume, that is not specified. That will be specified later. So now next one, sensitive of personal data processed. So that is something that the entities who processed. Now annual turnover of the data fiduciary, whether 1 million Indian rupees or it is 200 million Indian rupees, so that will be decided. So now use of new technologies, of course, all the new technological companies, innovations, which has all this criteria, also one or more criteria fulfilled, they might be subject to this. Now risk of harm resulting as part of processing, very, very important. Okay, and it is also telling that we don't want to make a standard which all size fits all. So we don't want to do that. That is why the data privacy bill has taken cognizance of telling that it will be applicable in force up to some of these guys, but nevertheless others has to practice, but it is will not be something there. So now here these are some of the sections which is there, like other data privacy regulations, but there are some things which I want to highlight is the data localization aspect. You must be seeing that is a talk of the town, and fast copy has to be stored in India because of our requirements. Okay, so that is something being debated. So those entities who do not have an office here, how they will store, that is a debate going on. So there are different modalities that is coming. Now next one is penalties and remedies. Although there are financial penalties that is applicable, maybe 4% of the annual turnover or 15 crores in case of violations. But however, there is a penalty which is in addition to other regulations is there, that criminal offense. So in India, it is there in IT Act, but also it is also carved out same way here. So we have financial penalty, criminal offenses which you may go to jail. Okay, so that is there. Now the second one is something which is very, very important is privacy by design is mandated here. So it talks about that you have to keep a proof of that, and you have to ensure that records are maintained. The second one is data classification, and here India has ensured that the financial data is covered under critical data and sensitive data also. But some of the data elements which was there, that has been enhanced. That means some additional has been added for India. So you can look at the Indian data privacy law available on the net, and you can look at that what are the additional data elements that are there. So data inventory, data flow, process flow, it is something has to be maintained for all the critical items, critical processing that happens. So that is something in there. Now, in addition to this, this is applicable for significant other data fiduciaries wherever data privacy is applicable. Now, but there is a mandate for these significant data fiduciaries. What is the mandate? They are supposed to do data privacy impact assessment, of course, for the different conditions, right? But they have to do. There is no escape. Records of processing they have to maintain. Record keeping is a key. You cannot bypass. And data audits, annual data audits has to be there, and it is a very good for all the friends here and others. It's a business stream that is opening up, and a lot of data audits will happen. Each company has to do that. Now coming to registration with the data protection authorities. So once you are under the category of significant data fiduciaries, you have to register with the data protection authorities with all the details of your data processing and personal data protection standards, guidelines, and all that. You have to do that like we are doing elsewhere. Now, next one is appointment of data protection officer. Yes, it is important that you have to have a data protection officer, whether you are processing here or you are processing the Indian data somewhere else. So, but there are some guidelines. Data protection officer need not be exclusive. He can do other activities as well in the company, but he has to be qualified, and he has to ensure that it is happening, and the eligibility criteria will be laid down, and they have to be based in India. It is not that data protection officer of some company setting in US can happen. So it should be happening. So what I was trying to give a feel that whatever we are doing right now, it will need a transformation, need a change, mindset change, culture change, and we'll address the change and we'll move on. Okay.
Sir, a quick one. So I think we have almost reached towards the end.
Yes.
So I would request, I think maybe another 5 to 10 minutes, I think we should be able to wrap up. So I would request all the participants to be on the bridge, and hopefully we will finish the presentation another 5 minutes, and another next 5 minutes we can take the Q&A. Okay, go over to you, sir. Please go on.
Yeah, guys. So we have discussed much, but just I want to leave some thoughts, key takeaway in your mind. So privacy and technology will coexist in balanced manner and harmonized way. As we discussed, no one will be having a trade-off that this will happen, that is not happen. So then, as we discussed, privacy principles are applicable in all stages with data lifecycle, starting from your data collection till your data deletion, downloads, and uploads. Right now, there is a lot of focus of adoption of new privacy enhancing technologies in the enterprises. Okay, and there is a lot of consumer awareness happening, and people are becoming more and more aware about the privacy and protecting their privacy, which is forcing enterprises to take some actions to protect their privacy. Then, in all data privacy regulations have privacy principles in common, and will have minimal local and contextual changes as for need or requirement. So finally, privacy by design is a mantra to implement privacy requirement in systems. And I should not say this, privacy is a journey, and it is not one-time activity, my dear friends. Thank you, and I am open for questions.
Thank you, sir. I think it was a great presentation. I think we have got a lot of questions, but I'm just kind of collecting the similar threads and thoughts, and then so that we can have the questions in a sequential manner. Meanwhile, I think I would just flash the Mentimeter slide for the feedback of the session. So just bear with me for a second. I would request everyone to give your feedback on the Mentimeter. I'm just sharing it on the screen. And in the meantime, we will also take up questions parallelly. Sir, I have a question from Raghunandan. Any references to the compliance obligations under specific data protection laws for mergers and acquisition, since data privacy should be a key role in the acquirer due diligence process and the seller's preparatory strategy. So how do you see data privacy for mergers and acquisition in the high level?
Okay, interesting question. I think this is the talk of the town now, because we do not have a definite framework for ensuring the data privacy in mergers and acquisition stages. But we can have some best practices that I can share, and from my experience is that, so that there are two entities which are getting merged. So either they can stand alone in their own kind of systems or policies, that is number one, or they're merging with one another, right? So the first one is, if they're going to be standalone, that means it will be respected that they're only ensuring that overall merger is happening, but their practices, systems will remain the same. Then each of the entities, they have to enforce the data privacy individually at entity levels, and only those data elements which are common, which will be shared across at the enterprise level or corporate level, that can undergo the data privacy framework assessments, and can put measure. That is number one. The second scenario is that the company B is merging with company A. Okay, that means all the practices of company B is getting merged with company A, and over a period of 18 months or over a period of 20 months. And it will merge also with the systems, technologies and processes. So everything is merging. Then what can happen? So we can prioritize few of the things that needs to be done, which are primary on the data subject aspect. So that means the consent and notice and non-disclosure agreements. So those can one can be taken care for the existing employees and stakeholders. The second point is all your newcomers or your new joinees, new customers. So the website policies and the website external facing privacy can taken on priority, right? So that you take care of those on priority. And then all those places where we are processing sensitive data. So sensitive personal data, we have to identify them through different mechanisms, very difficult, but through different ways, through either data discovery tools or from the practices, from the discussions, and take control of the privacy, maybe temporarily till you have a full-fledged system on those sensitive data processing. That is a key that will have impact. And the fourth one is talking about the data transfers. If the data transfers is across borders and that requires an privacy compliance, like you are doing from Europe to India or Europe to non-adequate countries, then data transfer is something that has to be taken care and it has to put in place. So we have to prioritize some of the controls, and without compromising on security at rest, security and transit. So that is going to happen, that we have to protect. But data privacy controls can taken in phases, starting from the external facing to internal and our new hires to our new customers, and also ensuring that we prioritize sensitive data transfers, and all those kind of.
Thank you, sir. I think that's a very comprehensive view from a consultant way, right? How do you take care of data privacy in mergers and acquisition? Thank you very much for the inputs. The next question is from Mr. Subraidu. Can you provide few sample key risk indicators with respect to privacy related risk for the organizations to monitor? And again, any guidance where we have to pick up the data to measure these kind of sample KRIs, key risk indicators?
Okay, so I have given some resources in the at the end slide. Okay, so in order to understand that what will come under the low risk and high risk categories, so maybe one good idea is to refer to GDPR sanctions and penalty section. GDPR, so what you call the regulation is free to be downloaded from Europa sites, and there are sections where it clearly talks about the penalties and the remedies. So there, if you look at, they have categorized which are the data privacy principles carries more penalties, and some are carrying less penalty in comparison to them. Then you can start focusing on the high penalties, because that is something that has to be taken care. Okay, so the high penalties areas which will be coming under the data subject rights, your legitimate processing, okay, and your data transfer mechanisms, and many more. But surprised to see that security is coming under the not on the high priority but low priority. Why is that? Because it is expected that whenever you design any system, many of the security controls are already in place because of secure by design principles which is adopted already in the SDLC. Okay, plus privacy risk is directly impacting to the individuals, which is causing the human rights. So because of that, human rights take the precedence over the little bit of the other ones.
Okay, thanks, sir. I think we have some more related questions around the legal and regulatory aspect around the countries, right? So a question from Anand T. Which countries in Asia has got stronger privacy requirements like than GDPR? Is there is any reference we can use to compare? In your experience, have you seen any stronger privacy requirements in Asian countries?
Yeah, see, it will be not okay or comprehensive to compare any kind of regulation in Asia Pacific. Okay, but there are multiple ones. So if you look at that, it is good to look at the current data privacy bill of India, okay, which has taken care of most of the best practices across the globe. That is number one I can suggest. So that will give one. And the second thing is there is Singapore PDPA that is there, and Australian law. You can look at that, but that will give different way of implementation. I talked about principles are same, contextual implementation might differ, but they also have their comprehensive nature based on the data. So right now, another good way to look at and then make little bit, if you most of the guys can doing the Chinese government, right? So if you are doing any business in China, then their China's cyber law, and recently they have enacted some of the draft what you call comprehensive law, which is not yet done, but it is in bit and pieces. So look at that. But
Okay.
my suggestion would be whatever we have seen and I have done the research. Some of the good thing is to do and deep dive on Indian data privacy bill first, because
Okay.
that will clear all your doubts. And if you ensure that that happens and we are good in doing that, then automatically other things will fall in place.
Okay. Okay. So the next question, an interesting one, a recent incident from Mr. Girish Kulkarni has asked this question. Recent breach of passengers' data of airline organization in India has caused a considerable damage. In this situation, how data subjects can ensure the organization protects our data? Again, the question is also more towards how government can act swiftly and provide confidence to the data subject. Since you don't have a PDPA in India, what is your view on this?
Okay, see, PDPB is not there, but however, the current and existing IT Act and with the amendments that is happening from time to time covers part of the sensitive data as well. Okay, the sensitive data also covers some of the data that has been compromised by the Air India attack, right? So that will be covered. But however, what are the steps government should take? Something that may not be appropriate for me to explain that, but however, the best practices that happens is government has published, since it is a multiple customers, it is not an individual entity. So they have done a press release by Air India and they have disclosed, they are agreed that there was a data breach. So that is the notification at large scale that can happen, that has already happened. And they have contacted with the CITA, who is the passenger application system, and they have already done some research and discussion with them, telling them what are the data compromised and what are the different instances. So once that particular detail is available or it is there, then both the parties, government of India and the passenger system supplier who has given those systems, they can get into act to bridge those gaps. That is number two. Number three,
Mhm.
the penalty session, the penalties or data subjects things, that is something which has to be decided by the regulators. So if the data subject in India, they feel, which we do not have a right now, but under the Right to Information Act or even to the filing the grievances or complaints, still they can file that and they can notify if they have traveled and that is compromised. But however, that will be taken into consideration or whether it will be accepted or not, that's subject to various other regulations and their linking and their integration.
Okay, okay. Thank you, sir. So I think we'll take up another two questions before we wrap up. And I would request everyone to provide your feedback in the Menti code. It is already displayed in the meantime. So the next question is from Shaumik Day. Uh, any data privacy monitoring tools that you would recommend which can proactively monitor sensitive data in cloud and other environments? Any tools you can recommend, sir?
Okay, so I am not the person who can recommend in this call. Okay, but
Okay, okay.
I can suggest something. you can look at different ways. Okay, the monitoring part is into 3 or 4 different angles you can do. You can ensure about network monitoring. Okay, that you can do. Then there is something when from your network you are storing something into the cloud. Then cloud access broker or something that is available from different ways it is implemented. So you can look at the intermittent between when it is going from your organization to the cloud and back. So that can be monitored. And then, of course, you will have DLP, which you can implement. Different DLP tools can be implemented. But the DLP tool has to be implemented in the preventive mode, not in the detective mode. Because if you do in the detective mode, then altogether after the incident has occurred, you will come to know. But it may be good idea to implement in the preventive mode, which will be either given different conditions, which might slow down the business and the responses and all, but we have to do a balancing act there. So,
Okay.
but there are n number of tools available which are good, which are not good. Some have different functionality, but of course you can look at do an research and find out.
Okay, thank you, sir. So the next question, I think it's from an anonymous person, but the question was good, so I would read it out. So when compared to European and US countries, like the privacy awareness among India is very low. And what can we do to address this issue? How to improve the privacy awareness within the organization and among the common public?
Yeah, so there are multiple things that we can do. Okay, if you understand there, it has increased to great extent. People are aware now, and people are knowing from different frauds and different kind of hacking, their lose of funds, and also some cases it is happening which is notified. But there are multiple things within the organization. I'll put into one is public, one is organization. At organization level, we can have some kind of scenarios where we'll just like you do a phishing attack or you do other kind of attacks. So you can create some cyber privacy kind of sessions and create some kind of a view with the, of course, approval from the senior management to create that there is a privacy kind of what you call tabletop exercise breach happened, and the individual data is compromised. How company is taking care of that? Okay, of course you have to be sensitive on the type of data. It has to be done differently, but that is one is by doing a tabletop exercise which you can ensure that it is happening, which do one. Then second, privacy orientations can happen very often. And in the root level, what can happen whenever, like we have coding standards, we have secure by design standards, and we have other standards, there is a good idea to design some of the privacy do's and don'ts to start with, basics, and start implementing and giving like a handbook to all the guys who are going into the development, and then make it for system, make it for cloud migrations. So that is another way to do. The fourth way is in your existing like a security awareness quiz, or whenever we join, we have something called as onboarding kit. So during onboarding, you can also have some capsule on the data privacy to ensure that whatever the details they're signing, that means they're signing a lot of bunch of documents, either online or physical. Okay, so we can relate them, telling that you look at that you have given all these. This is how companies protecting your privacy, given a visual view, and can create a kind of a visual studio kind of view, and just to do that. And a quiz kind of thing should be there at each year, which can talk about their getting criteria for next year, or email kind of activeness or something that can be enforced, which is hard, but it can be done. Otherwise, there are multiple things we can do. Awareness and privacy tips we can distribute. We can have privacy scenarios, then give some project scenarios, like you are going for a project party and you want to upload your project party photo in your social sites. What are the different points that you can take care? So, and yes, and during interview techniques, during whenever you are having interview techniques, you are teaching, you can tell what you are not supposed to ask from different people. Okay, and you can tell that in US, if you are going to take an interview for a US candidate, you are not supposed to ask them their age, their salary, or any other personal details, whereas we tend to ask that for our Indian folks, right? So those are kind of country specific and can be given.
Yeah, I think yeah. So that's wonderful, sir. I think so much of questions. I think we try to take as much more than like 25 questions we were able to answer. And again, yeah, it's a kind of a roller coaster, right? So thank you so much. I think the important key takeaways you have covered in terms of what is privacy all about, and how to what is the data lifecycle, the privacy by design, and what are the practices. And I really like the use case of a visitor management system. I know it's a kind of a big topic, but again, for an introductory level, you have given all the pointers where people can kind of ponder, and we would definitely take the feedback from the session. And maybe if you want to plan a larger session in the later half of the year, we should definitely do it. And thank you so much for your valuable time. And we're so happy that we got more than even the 200 plus participants still live. So it speaks for itself. And I would like to thank you so much on the behalf of the executive committee of ISACA Bangalore chapter for your time, and making this effort for the session and for benefiting our members and the larger audience. Thank you so much, sir. And I think we will, of course, to all the people in the bridge, we will have more exciting and informative sessions coming up in the months. So please stay tuned to ISACA Bangalore chapter, and for the wonderful events, and stay safe in home, and stay protected, and hope you to meet you soon in the upcoming other sessions. Thank you all, and have a great day ahead.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, thanks, Ganeshan and Venki and all the executive members of ISACA Bangalore. So thanks for giving me this opportunity. I love to speak on pointed sessions. If it is there, we can cover them in subsequent if there is a request from the participants. And always it is good to share the learnings and best practices so that the industry knows and we all grow and learn together. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all. Bye. Bye, sir. Bye.